Welcome to Sequential Artist Workshop. We're going to talk about narrative images, and we're going to talk about how they move the story along. We're going to look at two examples, one a children's book and one an adult book from Gilbert Hernandez. And we're just going to look at how each of them utilize time and how they represent the present, but they also imply the past or the future, depending upon the panel, depending upon the moment. So we're going to start with Mercer Mayer, old children's book author, creator of a character named Sheldon. This is a silent story called Frog. Where are you? And so what we're going to do is look at each image. It's separate. It's a silent book, and we're going to look at each image separately. So this first image, we're looking at the present. There's a boy, there's a dog, there's a frog in a jar, and there's a bedroom. Now, it's a compelling enough image. They're all cute, and the lines are cool. And more interestingly, there's a frog in a jar, and it looks pretty happy. So we're wondering, what's going on? We're presuming that in the past they caught this thing, and we're not really wondering too much about the future because everything seems fine. So notice there's a big gap here between that panel and that panel. So already there's some interesting choices being made in what panels do you show, or what moments do you show. Sheldon Mayer didn't show the boy and the dog getting ready for bed or climbing into bed or anything like that. The next panel is the boy and dog sleeping and the frog slipping out of the jar. And now we're interested. Again, in the present, it's a great drawing. We're really interested. It looks nice. This drawing of the frog coming out of the jar is funny, but also now we're really engaged. We're wondering about the future. We're wondering what's happening next. Oh, and now a new present, a new moment. Third panel. The boy and the dog are looking into the jar. The jar is empty. It's daylight. And now they're lost sort of in the past. Maybe they're wondering, when did that happen? How did that happen? We're wondering what's going to happen next. So this is a great example. This panel here, this is a great example to me of a panel that out of context wouldn't make any sense. Like, if you didn't already have that buildup of those three panels, this boy like holding this weird big shoe over his head and this dog with its head in the jar wouldn't really make any sense. It's a great example of making the present image compelling, strange, different, stylistically interesting, things like that. Luckily, it's focused mostly because we've caught up to it. We understand the past, but we don't really know what's coming. We are definitely interested. Are they going to find the frog in these various locations? But that's not where the story goes. The story goes out the window. And so in this image, we're definitely interested. Now the past is sort of like it's incorporated into our understanding, and we sort of know what's happened already. And we're fixated often on the future, what's going to happen next. And here we're interested, are they going to find the frog outside? Oops. Now the dog is falling in another interesting moment. And we're very interested in the future. We're very interested in, is this dog going to be okay? This is another area where Mercer Mayer shows us a big gap in time. He doesn't show the crash. He doesn't show the action of the crash. Doesn't show the boy climbing down. Doesn't show the dog feeling momentarily wounded, presumably shocked, something like that. What he shows us next, and we'll go back one to remember it. He immediately shows us that next panel where it's already been shattered, that jar, and the dog is already happy. This is one where the author is mostly showing us the present and the past. The past is the shattered jar, and also the sort of contrast between the glare of the boy and the happiness of the dog. At this moment, we're not really interested in the future, or we're not like deeply engaged with the future. This is a moment where the sort of change in the rhythm of the story has gone from future to moment of the past. Which is interesting because now we're mostly getting merely a present moment. It's a boy calling out. The dog is sniffing the air, and it's large, and it's mostly a chance for the reader to rest. It's a bigger image. It's a change of scenery, and not a lot is surprising about the recent past. No shattered jar, for instance, on the ground, or the near future. Although there is a hint of a beehive, which in cartoons often might spell mayhem. So now the images sort of separate. We've got a boy story and a dog story. The boy is calling down to the hole, and we're wondering what's going to come out of it. The dog is leaping at the beehive. We're definitely wondering what's going to come of that. Panel 2, they're on different tracks now. The dog is still leaping at the beehive, but by panel 1, so that's sort of the future we're interested in. But they're not panels. But the boy story, we're wondering what just happened. Did the groundhog, or we're at least drawn to connect the dots. We're noticing that this groundhog has either just bitten the boy, or at least surprised him by coming close enough to his head. And so now we've got sort of two images happening at once, or two stories happening at once. And this is a moment, again, in the present. It's always a moment in the present, but we're piecing together the past here and imagining the future there. So this is actually one of the more complicated panels in the book. And, now this is us. Again, it's always a present moment, but now we're looking at the past here. We're putting together what just happened. The beehive has just fallen down, but now he is bringing us into the future with what's going to come out of that hole. And what comes out of the hole is an owl, and this is maybe also one of the more complicated images in the book. The dog story has moved it across from left to right through the boy story. The boy has fallen down from having disturbed the owl. Did it fall over the bees, before the bees, after the bees, under the bees? It's hard to know exactly, and that makes it a pretty compelling image in a fun way. Now we're actually piecing together space and time a little. Probably the only time this happens in the book. So we're wondering now, again, we're compelled by the past, just a moment of like, I see now that the boy was surprised and maybe even hurt by the owl, but I'm still wondering, now I'm in the future, I'm still wondering what's going to happen next with the dog and the bees. And this is a moment of sort of balancing in between past and future. The owl seems to be coming for the boy and chasing him, so we're wondering about the future, and he's climbing up this rock. So yeah, it's more about the future, and as always, the present. But now the owl's no longer a threat, so the owl's sort of here, and now we're in another moment of the present, although there's a little lingering present/past coming in, because this dog looks kind of hobbled as if it's been stung, but not much comes of that. But the boy is still hollering because we're still on a quest to find this frog. But, now, really strange image. Again, when you make those images in the present really strange, you can get away with not much inference of the past or the future. We know what happened in the moment before this, so the past is not of that much interest. And the future isn't that interesting yet. We're certainly wondering what's going to happen, but we're more compelled by just how strange this image is and how strange this action was. The deer starts to walk off with the boy on its head, the dog walking, and the dog following underfoot. And now there's a precipice, a cliff. We're obviously wondering what's going to happen. The past is firmly in our brain because it's been utilizing mostly recent moments from the past few moments of the story, and then dump into the presumably into the pond or something. And so we're wondering, are they going to make it? Or are they going to splash? Are they going to land on a giant fish or a bunch of garbage or whatever? So this moment is a moment where the present is really striking and the future is on our mind. And they land in the water. And I think this is a moment where that's mostly about the present. And there have been a couple of these in the book. To me, this moment is a moment also of rest, where you just sort of see something happen and you don't need to worry too much about the future or the past. The past is all in our brain. We don't know. There's nothing unknown about the past. And the future, we presume they'll be okay because it's a children's book and it doesn't look like it's very deep water. We're interested, as always, with are they going to find the frog? And so, continuing the past, but now it's the boy is sort of directing us to the future a little bit. Wait a minute, I hear something. We're wondering, what do you hear? Even the dog is sort of looking that way. Now, again, the boy is leading us into the future at the moment. He's saying, shh. And he's going to bring us presumably into the hole in this log. Nope, not the hole. He's going over the log. And now it's the author sort of bringing us into the future. The author is saying, presumably, I'm going to show you what's on the other side of that log. I haven't shown you yet. And there we get to see what's on the other side of the log. And this is another present moment. Mostly it's the present. It's mostly a charming little moment of a boy, a dog, and two frogs. Presumably one of the frogs is the one we lost. This looks like this might be a romantic coupling, both because of contrast in scale, but also the happiness on the frog's face. So we almost feel like the story might be over, but it's not. We see there's more to the frog story. There's a brood of baby frogs. And because we're nearing the end of the story, and it feels like the end of the story, because they started by the search for the frog, and they found the frog, and there's not much suspense being created by the images at this point, we're sort of winding down, and we sort of feel it. The boy and the dog walk back towards the left, which is the return in the story, in the visual of the story. Most of the story has gone left to right. Now it's going right to left. And they're taking one baby frog with them, and that seems to be the end, and everybody seems happy. And it is the end. So that's a great example of utilizing time, engaging, always giving us a present that's interesting to look at, but engaging us in being involved in piecing together the past or piecing together the future. And so what we're going to look at now is just a few panels of this great comic by Gilbert Hernandez that does all of this stuff in a more sophisticated way. Here we have a moment. The present is really compelling. It's this woman, she's dressed in very fine clothes. She's on this lonely road with nothing around it, with this giant plume of smoke behind her. We're utterly wondering, wow, what just happened? We're wondering that way more than we're wondering what's going to happen. We're presuming that if we keep reading, we'll get some answers to what happened in the past. So panel 2, Gilbert uses this as a present-only moment, as just a, this is the present. This doesn't give us really any new information, except it's a moment to give us the title, which is Spirit of the Thing. However, now it's all narrative dynamics from here on in. She comes upon this man and this woman in this graveyard, a little bit of the smoke behind her. I need a room and a bath. So we're wondering, are these people going to help her? What kind of story is going to be involved, and what kind of answers are we going to get? This moment is this moment where he tries to sort of point her in the direction of the things she needs, but this is an example where the moment is styled and depicted to give us a lot of information about her character. She's shadowed. She's also saying, take me. She's not saying, take me, please. She's really like cold. And now the story can move forward. We presume that either he will take her or there'll be a fight. So we're really interested in the future now, but don't forget, we're also really interested in the past. We still want to know what panel 1 was all about. So panel 2 really just gives us new location and it mostly exists in the present. And as we saw with Mercer Mayer, the present can sort of give us a moment of relief from having to be too intensely involved in the story, but it does give us the new information of the town. And so she's sort of looking at the town, and we and she are wondering what kind of story is going to happen in this town to me, the character. We get some more information. This again, I think, is about the present, but also the future. She's getting her key. What's going to happen in that hotel room? He's looking at her in a way he hasn't really before. Like now we're starting to see curiosity in him, whereas mostly he was just in service. So we're wondering, okay, what's going to happen between them? Third panel on this page, I think third panel. Mostly again in the present, she's pointing. But because of his stance, because we've sort of embodied him a little bit in some of the previous panels, we're wondering what's going to happen. Is he going to be treated kindly? Is he going to be thanked? In fact, that's what happens in panel 4. What? Oh, sigh. Thank you. And again, that's mostly about the present. We're mostly learning about her. The present is giving us new information about the character, how deeply cold, in fact, she is. His stance sort of gives us sort of more of the same. But we can sort of see from his interest and stance that he's interested in the same thing we are, which is like, who is she and what's her story? So I'll leave it to you to find the rest of the story for you, for yourself in the Saw Network. There are a lot of interesting things happening and some really compelling moments that are some that are really wild and out of context, especially if they were out of context, and some with big gaps in time, and a lot of cool answers and a lot of cool questions. It's a really complicated, interesting story. Definitely worth checking out. So that's a little bit more about narrative images and how they work to keep us engaged, to find out answers in a story, and to be sort of immersed in the story, and to have our desire for narrative, which is like a universal desire, to have it constantly sort of like tweaked at and engaged. And the author, authors and artists can like give us little gifts to that part of our brain. They can say, here's something more for you to think about. Here's something more for you to engage with. Here's something more for that narrative part of your brain that wants to put together stories. Here's just a little bit more. And that's what great storytelling is.